Why, hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. It's Mary Cronert here on behalf of the Living Room Community Arts Studio with another live stream artist chat. Every Tuesday, we try to connect with another amazing artist, maker, change maker in the community who's doing interesting things to, to bring more interest into our world, to teach us about who they are, to raise awareness about the things they're passionate about, and how to explore how they create around, through, and with those elements in their life. It's one way of us staying connected to one another during strange and uncertain times, but it also gives us an opportunity to perhaps recognize parts of ourselves in that creator that we might draw upon and hopefully be inspired by to create more change. So today we're talking with another lovely human being, a student out there who I first connected with through the Danny Crosby of the Fine Arts Community Collaboration class at Durham College. So you can say, I suppose these last few weeks have been about students, learners of all ages and stages. But this week we're chatting with Kayla Rose of Creative KP, an illustrator, a graphic design student, but so much more than that. And I'm so excited to be chatting with them. So you know what? Why don't we just bring them on? Let me send an invite. And yeah, because of course Kayla would do a much better idea, a much explain themselves much more effectively than I can today. When hello, thank you from rescuing me from my tongue-tiedness. Today,
okay. Hi.
Today is one of those days where I'm just like, words, difficult, functioning, things.
Oh yeah, I get those.
That's good to know. It's good to know that I'm not the only one. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, well, all of those things I just mentioned and more. It's just a weird
Hmm.
time. I think for a lot of folks,
Yeah.
transitions and I was going to say distractions, but they're not so much distractions as what do we choose to focus our attention on right now when there's so much going on in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Especially since how for a lot of us, like school has become home. So distraction is something that is like more of a problem than it's ever had to be. Because when I used to go to school, it was like, oh, I'm in school. We're good. It's we're here. But now I have to manage that a whole lot more than ever had to.
And it's also interesting because even for the folks who are going back into the physical classroom, there are still moments,
Hmm.
days where they can't, or things
Absolutely.
turn around. If there's a case in the classroom, for example, then things flip
Yeah.
online. So it's this weird back and forth for all students
Yeah.
there.
Definitely.
Oh, well, I can't wait to talk to you more to learn about how you cope with that or not.
Yeah.
But before I get caught up in all of that, folks who may not be familiar with who you are and what you do, could you please introduce yourself in your own words?
Yeah. My name is Kayla. I go by Creative KP on most of my social medias that I promote my art on. I'm 21. I'm a third year graphic design student and illustrator, just on the side, basically. Um, yeah, I really love cats, D&D.
Hey, that's something I want to get around to today as well. But I think
Oh yeah.
for any D&D fans out there, anyone who watches or things stream on live, you probably recognize some of the themes.
Yes, my stuff.
I know I did. I was like, ah, any
Yeah.
critters
Yeah.
will love creative KP stuff. But okay,
Yeah.
so illustrator, graphic designer. Um, has that always been your passion?
Actually, well, yes and no. I've always been in visual arts.
Okay.
My mom will always tell me stories of how, like, they used to put paper down on the ground and put me down in my diaper and paint and just let me go. So that was the thing that it's been from the start. I've been interested in visual arts, but design specifically only came into my life near the end of high school. We had a design course, and one of my art teachers was like, "Hey, I think this might be the thing for you," because at that point I had only been doing like a little bit of every art. I knew I loved to draw. I knew I liked even taking pictures. Like I was in all the photography stuff too. And but when graphic design came in, and I was like, "Oh wait, I could do this," and it's like a little more concrete to me than kind of, because like I know what I like to draw, but when it comes to art that I know other people will enjoy, it's a little tougher because you can't predict what people want from you. But I found that graphic design brought me a bit of, like, it gave me like a ramp into the field of art that wasn't like just paint something and hope people like it, because you're being told kind of an element of what to do. You're given a direction or a prompt or something. So I found that was really helpful for me. But it's interesting because I still don't necessarily know if graphic design is what I want to do for my entire life. I like it a lot, but I don't think I'm ever going to let go of the illustration and that as well, and making comics and such.
Oh yeah, I did see some comics in your Instagram as well. Come back to that too. It's really interesting when people talk about art and design, or I suppose what they're really talking about is the concept of fine art and
Yes.
graphic design.
Yeah.
Is that how you would like, is that the main difference for you right now, is that graphic design is a little more structured, you're working with a client towards a common goal, versus fine art, it's just all about you? And
I find that I might have misphrased it. I think that for me, it's structure is a big one, like you said. And the other part of it is that the end product, like what you want to come out of it, is different. Like I find when I'm doing my drawings, for me, I think of like a feeling or an emotion or a narrative I want to come out of this piece. When I'm doing graphic design, it's like, what is the goal? What's the objective of this logo, for example? And that might be like, for a farmer's market, it might be like a homegrown natural feel. And that's the sort of end product you're like weaning towards. Whereas with illustration and the stuff that I do on my own, it could be a whole lot more open-ended. So structure is definitely part of it, is that like the end product is kind of pre-designated for you.
yeah.
But in that way, it can be kind of confining. You can't really let your creativity quite as loose in graphic design, which is why I like both halves of the coin.
And I wonder if there is a place where the two sides of that, or the areas, can meet as well.
Yeah.
Because I see some of that in the work you do, the fan art that you do.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, that's a little bit of both, isn't it? You know, kind of what end goal, what area it's living in.
Exactly.
And yet you can still have and express it the way you want to express it.
Yeah, I think that's why it's like my outlet. That's why it's kind of come to there, is because it's a perfect blend of feeling like something comfy that I've done ever since I was like 12, which is like the drawing aspect, and then getting to blend learning new technologies and new digital methods, which is the sort of like, I'm always challenging myself a little bit, but I'm also still staying in my comfort zone a little bit. So it's a good blend of both.
Have you ever come to a place with that, you know, with the fan work that you do, where it has pushed you out of the comfort zone? Has there been a moment where you've realized, okay, this is new territory for me?
Yeah, there have been a couple times. I would say that something I need to practice more, and this is something that has come up in a couple pieces, is drawing a lot of things that need to fit into frame and figuring out how that works, especially when there is an instance of multiple characters that you're trying to organize how they will work compositionally all together. And especially details as well. Like you mentioned Critical Role earlier, those character designs are detailed. So simplistic styles don't tend to blend with that heavy level of detail, but it is kind of an instance of like, okay, let's try it. Let's see how I can blend what I'm used to and challenge myself and push myself to do something a little different as well.
Have you ever shared any of your critter stuff with that community?
Well, except for my friends, no. But it's interesting because I find that particularly Critical Role and D&D in general, though, have been kind of like a natural progression of everything I already love. So it's wild that I've only stumbled into this now. I fell into D&D last year, but because for me, it's like, I love storytelling. I love this concept of building a world and building a character. I've been doing that for years. And then, whoops, here's this game system that does, you could just do it. So it's so fun that there's something that is so much of a natural progression of everything I already loved. And it's all just bundled into one. It's been great.
I feel the exact same way. And well, maybe it's okay if this conversation gets hijacked by role.
I'm sorry.
No, it's me. This is entirely on me. I fell into I finally started playing D&D about 2 years ago now, almost.
Hmm.
After years of appreciating stuff I've been watching online and
Yeah.
learning. For people of my generation, we had the wonderful like Satanic Panic of the 80s and
Yes, of course.
don't play D&D or else kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I had that same realization where I was like, this is just storytelling.
Yeah.
This is me having an opportunity to explore different parts of myself in a really safe and manner
Hmm.
with people I enjoy being with, hopefully. And
Hmm.
it's a wonderful way to be creative that you don't
Hmm.
find in everyday life. Um, and it's so interesting to hear how that has in turn come back and sort of inspired and fueled your creative endeavors. If that wasn't there, what do you think you would be creating if not, like if that wasn't a framework for what you do?
That's a good question. I think that, well, I think that the thing about D&D that I really love, and I know a lot of my artist friends also love, is how to tell a story in a character that you don't necessarily need to say it to, like it's the show not tell of like if I want to have an artist character, um, or do they have like little paint splatters on their outfit? That kind of thing of like, so I feel like I would still be working on character design storytelling through the medium of what does this person look like and what can you infer about them through what they choose to wear essentially, and also how they like cut their hair and that kind of stuff. Like little things like I was thinking about like a character who never wears formal outfits. Well, they probably wouldn't wear all of their formal things particularly well. Like, what if they wore a jacket like buttoned on the wrong button or something like that?
Yeah.
Um, so I think character design is something that kind of has remained the same throughout for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, D&D has just kind of pushed it along. But that would probably remain. And I also do have a lot of interest in, like, I love to read. I love watching shows. So that kind of narrative is always running through too.
I was going to ask you about that because part of my background in acting is like all of those questions you're talking about through the lens of visual art expression. I've asked myself through the lens of performance as well when you're
Exactly.
figuring
Yeah.
out what the character does and writing as well. So,
Hmm.
okay, let's rewind this back then
Yeah.
to that first love of storytelling where you chose to kind of do a deep dive in it. So you mentioned already being on the floor on a big piece of paper with diapers.
Yes.
Well, in diapers, not with diapers. That would be
Yes.
parenting. However, uh, when did you first catch on? Oh, wait, I can tell a story with what I create.
It's a very cheesy example, but I do have one. When I was younger, one of the first how to draw books I was given as I think a Christmas gift was a how to draw manga book, and one of them was about like paneling a comic. And I remember I really wanted to tell a story of Rapunzel from Tangled. I think I was maybe like 14 or 15. I'm not 100% sure on that. I wanted to tell the story of her in Hogwarts. So I wrote a little one-page comic strip of her in Hogwarts, and looking back on it, I'm like, hey, it actually wasn't that bad. But I did it entirely with just like what I had on hand, which wasn't a ton of materials, but I think that sparked it because from then on, I'm like, okay, well, this was a really short snippet of a story. Where can we go from here? Um, and it was just two ideas of pre-existing like things mashed together, um, but it was really fun for me. And at that time, it was a big challenge because I'm like, oh boy, panels and um, drawing characters from the same angle and how do they, or different angles and how do they look the same, and that kind of stuff was a hurdle at first for sure. Still working on it.
So how old were you when you did that, do you think? How old was that?
I think I'm gonna guess probably about 15, 14, 15, I think.
That's amazing.
Not 100% sure. I can't remember when that movie came out.
And do you still draw comics?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's been a little bit of a backseat on it because school has taken up so much of my creative like energy and focus.
Yeah.
But I love to, and I have a bigger one sort of like planned. Um, Again, a little bit on the back burner because graphic design school just takes up so much of my brain. Um, but I love doing it. I really love getting across the idea of like particularly characters' interactions with each other
Mm-hmm.
in a short group. So like the few comics I have on here are kind of what I call mini comics.
Yeah.
Because they're just like either like one page or two page, but you get an idea of the character's relationship pretty quick. And that's what I kind of aim for, is like, how can I sell this um, in not necessarily like a challenged instance of like, oh, how short can it be, but more of like a, what does this need, and can I cut out anything non-essential?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been fun.
Well, that's the great thing about art, and I mean, in visual art specifically, a picture can tell 1,000 words. Like there's something
Yeah.
just there on the page for people to pick up on if they want to.
Hmm.
And it's interesting just thinking about just design. I imagine the graphic design you're studying now, even as it sounds grueling, it sounds like it's super intense.
A bit, yeah.
But I imagine it complements that kind of storytelling really, really well.
Yeah. I think for me, it really helps it helps the sort of is like the storytelling as well as the visual element of like how do these things work on a page and how much space should you give them. Graphic design has taught me a lot about like use of space and like, okay, how close to that should that be to the edge, and like that sort of stuff that um, that sort of makes those tiny little details add up in a way, which is cool.
Mm.
Um, and graphic design, yeah, like storytelling. I mentioned logos earlier, but you kind of have to tell a story through a logo. In terms of like, what is this business like? What do they represent? So we are taught a lot about that, and it does help because there's the same sort of stuff in all the side stuff that I do, where it's like, okay, if I'm designing a villain character for one of my D&D games, how can I quickly make it establish what kind of villain they are?
Yeah.
And then that's kind of but bounce off from there.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited because I think when I was talking to a colleague of yours, when I was talking to Phelan a few weeks ago,
Yes.
I think there was a rumor of Phelan perhaps doing a comic as well. Are we looking at a
Yes.
collaboration, perhaps?
Hmm.
Any collab?
I would love to collab with her. It's funny you mentioned that. We actually met at Durham College
Yeah.
at orientation day, which was wonderful. But yeah, I mean, her, it's wonderful. It like inspires me to do things as well. And it's just, it's fun too because there's challenges like the Dress in Your Style, which I put out and she did her version of, and she brought her own flair to it that was just so wonderful to see. And I loved it. And it's cool to see that kind of stuff when you put it out into the world and you're like, I hope people like this. And then they do. And it's like, oh boy, that was great what you did.
And well, that's one thing about the communities we're moving in right now too. When you find a community that is full of passion and
Hmm.
support and care, like genuine care. I mean, every community
Yes.
has its issues, but
Yeah.
seems to be with this kind of storytelling a really genuine, a community that's interested in genuine, authentic storytelling that
Yeah.
perhaps platforms a lot of voices that haven't had opportunities to speak before or be seen or heard before.
Hmm.
That's a
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I also think that, thankfully, I think that this is what I've noticed, at least in my little bubble. I don't know if it's the same out of my little bubble, but I've noticed there's a change on social medias of like, instead of a constant competition, it's more of a boost each other up.
Mhm.
Like being able to share everyone's like the trend of everyone's sharing art on everyone else's stories. Like every time one of my friends posts, you can see it on all of my other friends' Instagram stories.
Wonderful.
And I like that social media has sort of, it's not perfect by any means, but it used to be kind of all about like, can I get more likes than the last post? Can I get more likes than this one? But, or this artist that I like. And now I feel like it's a lot more like if you have your artist friends, you are boosting them out into the world because they're great and everyone should see them.
That's a really beautiful thing. And I don't know if it's
Hmm.
happening everywhere, but it really heartens me that it's happening in the circles.
Yeah.
Why do why do you think that is? Was there something that happened to create that change, or where does that come from?
I think honestly, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like for me anyway, that sort of changed in my mindset because I will admit I was part of that as well when I was like probably like 12 to I want to say like again like sort of 15 zone,
Hmm.
where it was like, oh, I have to be better than this person because I admire them. But I think the change just comes with growing a bit
Yeah.
and realizing that like just because this person that you look up to is great doesn't mean that you are less great. Um, just different.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, that was a realization that came later than I think most people would expect. For me, it was around like 18 when I realized I don't really have to, you know, make it a competition. It can just be, I'm proud of you, you're proud of me, and we're great, and that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Celebrating the differences as well as the common ground that exists.
yeah,
Because it is a really vulnerable thing to
Yeah.
put your work out there into the world. And I can't, like, again, yeah, like just there's so many ways for people to offer feedback. And
Hmm.
you hope that it's positive and wonderful and constructive and uplifting and
Yes.
acknowledging and affirming. Um,
Hmm.
how have you, it sounds like there was a point where you had to have that conversation with yourself about, I need to make some changes. Was
Hmm.
it a conscious moment where you switched to let's appreciate rather than criticize, or let's consider appreciation rather than just living in a world of critical response?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if it was one moment, but I think that as soon as I started to take my Instagram account more seriously and like, okay, I want to share my art so that people could see it in the world,
Mm-hmm.
I started to notice little things about um, how tough it can be in certain moments, and started to realize that, well, then the people that I've looked up to for years and years and years have also dealt with these parts that suck. And then that's sort of like, I don't mean this in a bad way, but sort of takes them off the pedestal in that, like, okay, it's approachable and they deal with this sort of stuff. I deal with this sort of stuff. And at that point, it's like, oh, you know, why see it like a competition when it can instead be, like you said earlier, mutual ground of like, we both know that this part is not fun. With like the pressure of like posting, like I try my best to post every Monday. That doesn't always happen. It's Tuesday, you
Right.
know? Um, but I think that, especially too, being in art school, because you're all in a position where it's like, and graphic design is supposed to be competitive, but my friend group, we're just like here for each other, like, which is so nice. But I find that when you're surrounded by other artists, it's more of like a, how can we assist each other and be these sort of fit puzzle pieces until we all get to a place we're happy with it.
I love that. That to me gives me hope. That is something that, as an artist myself, I look for, and then I've been waiting to see because it hasn't always
Mm-hmm.
been with small groups and clusters. Um, but one of the things I've noticed over, well, like I suppose the last 5 or 6 years, especially working with students, when we have the opportunity to be out there in community on campuses or wherever we might be, there are much the conversations that we have, or that students or younger people, as an oldie myself, that younger people are having around uh, mental health, around the fights or the coping with ableism, with sexism, with racism, with homophobia, transphobia, fat phobia, all of the things. There are much, like, the conversations are much more honest. There are conversations,
Yeah.
period. There are conversations, and
Mm-hmm.
the case is, and again, this is, I suppose, turning into a chat about age, but was there a moment in your life where you again realized that that was happening, or do you think there's something different about the people that you're going to school with right now, something that you've had to experience that maybe others haven't?
I think, honestly, I think it was college, like the start of college, because when you're in high school, obviously you're still connected to the outside world, of course, and more so my generation and everyone younger because we're all on social media and the news and everything. But as soon as you're still in your own little bubble in high school, though, but as soon as you get out, there's this sort of shift of like, suddenly you have to make more choices about what you want to do, and I find that college, at least for me, when I did the Foundations of Art and Design course, is a whole lot more of projects that are like, what do you care about?
Yeah,
And then it was like, oh boy, I get to talk about the stuff that I care about. And graphic design has honestly done the exact same thing, and you'd think it would be sort of the same, like advertisement after advertisement, but there have been a lot of opportunities to make artwork about stuff we care about. Like I did a Pride, uh, what's the word is escaping me, beer can design for one of my projects, which was quite fun.
yeah.
And there's like various projects like that where it's like you have the opportunity to make this about something um, that you care about, and it always ends up good because the passion is there.
I love that. And you know what? I have to acknowledge that in listening to you too, there's like an aspect of that that has to do with your teachers as well, giving you opportunities
Yeah,
that perhaps that wasn't as there. And
absolutely.
from someone in the community who I know is involved in education, Levislug too, says, I definitely feel like younger folks are so much more upfront about these issues than than mine has been. I love how my students' passion always comes through in truth. That's
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I love a select too is one of the awesome professors out there, awesome teacher. You're lucky if you have them as your teacher. Um, at least I find them a fantastic teacher, and I'm not even their student. Um, I think maybe it's a case of like
Hmm.
teachers or the people who are in a position, the privilege of educating now, have come
Yes.
as students themselves and realizing, I want to see more conversations like this. How can I facilitate these conversations? And then we have like, there's a receptive group of people who are saying, finally, I'm like,
Yeah.
and you're taking it though, like you're taking that forward. You're not just saying,
Hmm.
like, there is an active choice there to be seen and heard,
Yeah.
which is really
Yeah.
exciting.
It's scary, honestly, because every time there's been a project like that where the topic matter is something that matters very deeply to me,
Yeah.
when we're doing our presentations, I'm shaking talking about it.
Mm.
But that means that I care, and that's what that is. Yeah, and teachers, honestly, like I've gotten the absolute luck of the draw throughout my entire schooling career because I've always found art teachers that have pushed me forward and also supported me in just this incredible way of because like when I struggled in school, they were the safe haven.
Yeah.
So it's just so wonderful to get to have that, you know? It's yeah, so that is just so vital.
That's amazing. Any Durham College teachers out there listening? There,
Yes.
that's a lovely thing. Shout out. Um, and all the other places as well. What would we do without teachers? Um, just talking there when you talked about speaking up and shaking. That to me
Yes.
very kind of I had a feel there when I was like, oh, I know
Yeah.
this, uh, which does kind of lead me to the next part. Like I wanted to discuss with you about mental health and how we cope,
Mm, yeah.
like how we manage those ups and downs every day. Um, have you found that art, what came first, I suppose? Did art come as a response, as a way to like help manage everything? Or did your, did what you experienced through mental health actually inform the work you create or created?
I want to say that at first, I mean, I've been dealing with mental health stuff my entire life.
Mhm.
Um, I mentioned generalized anxiety disorder in our chats, but
Yeah.
so there's that, and then also sensory processing disorder is one of the things that I've also had since birth. And the thing about that for me is that I think the art started for me as just it wasn't necessarily a conscious choice, but it was definitely a thing that I felt good at and a safe space, which
Mm.
was nice. And even if it was just like I said earlier about Tangled and Harry Potter, it was an easy place for me to go where I was like, okay, this is something that comes easy to me. It feels good. We're good. And then as I grew older, I started to think of like, okay, how can I use this to actually not just be a nice little escape comfy corner, which is also great and totally valid, but also a way to help elevate in ways that I need help. So something I noticed in particular is that I listen better when I'm doodling. So I started advocating for myself and telling all my college professors, hey, if I'm doodling during your lectures, I promise I'm listening. It just genuinely helps me more because when I'm just listening and just giving that one unit, I tend to turn off.
Yeah.
um, and I noticed that that helped me. And then on the other hand of things, um, learning to draw, I remember even I think Faye was talking about this in the last live stream you guys did, but doing art for yourself.
Mhm.
Another thing incredibly important to input and output your creative energy like that. I think it was one of my college professors who was talking about that you need to have enough of an input of creativity that's just for you and then an output of creativity that you put out into the world.
Yeah.
And then if that balance is there, then you're able to put that output without getting burnt out.
Yeah.
Because this is something I'm very familiar with.
With being burnt out or
Yeah, yeah. But I've been slowly learning as I go to figure out how to use the drawings that I like as sort of a charge the battery in a
Mm.
way, which has been quite nice. And it's cool too to like, because I've always been, this is a weird thing, but I've always been told I'm very self-aware of myself.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to look at my own actions and behaviors and be like, okay, well, how can art sort of like act in different ways, in ways I need them in different parts of my life? You know, it was different in high school, it's different in first year of college, it's different now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So is there any activity, or when you talk about art for yourself, what do
Yeah.
you do? What are the things that help, recharge your batteries or help you let
Hmm.
anxiety or stress? What
Yeah. For
me?
me, it's definitely, oh, sorry.
Sometimes I ask nosy questions. So if I have
Um,
a question that's way too nosy, to say no, I don't want to talk about that.
No, it's totally okay. It's totally okay. Yeah, for me, it's like, I mean, we were talking about D&D and our interests earlier. It's definitely indulging in those,
Yeah.
and doing something that feels comfy and not feeling like there's any pressure to show anybody. It's hard growing up as a kid when you're an artist because you're so proud of everything you make, and everyone around you is typically like so very proud of everything you make. So they want to see it.
Yeah.
And so you end up in this, I mean, at least I have ended up in this habit of sharing everything, which is great, absolutely. But when you grow up a little bit, it is really good to have a drawing where you're like, no pressure. This can look crappy. It's fine. Um, and just having that release of like, no one is necessarily going to see this unless you want them to. That's really nice. And for me as well, just drawing things that are indulgent and bring me joy. Just things that are like, yeah, this might be the same thing I've drawn a bunch of times, but I'm going to do it again because I like it.
I love the act of repetition and creativity. I think there's something really beautiful.
Hmm.
Um, and I think we do learn and grow and explore through that. There's something very meditative
Yeah.
that allows
Hmm.
things, other processes to occur.
Hmm.
Do you have
Yeah.
to share what it is, but is there one specific thing that you return to again and again?
Um, I definitely have habit of drawing characters that sort of fit into my art style in a comfy way, typically like rounded shapes, um,
Yeah.
sort of soft. There's a particular jawline I like to draw that's just kind of soft. Um, Lots of curly hair. I love drawing curly hair. So that sort of thing for me is definitely there. But if I do that, I try to also like sometimes take inspiration from other things. Like, oh, I saw this artist use their markers in this way and color just the background of the sketch and not the sketch itself, and I'll try to like incorporate that in. Um, but yeah, typically it's kind of just soft round is what I go for as my comfort drawings.
I love that. That sounds beautiful. And it sounds very comforting. But beautiful and comforting at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, I love that the idea of exploring. You work digitally, but you also do a lot of hand
Hmm.
well. Do you have a preference between the two?
I like them both for different. Oh, sorry, Kitty's moving around. Um, I like them both for different times and in different ways.
Mhm.
I've noticed that I enjoy sharing my digital art more because I'm able to make something that feels more like what's in my head.
Hmm.
But for traditional art, I prefer drawing on paper 1,000% over drawing on my iPad, just because I'm very tactile. I like how it feels.
Yeah.
Um, I like drawing in sketchbooks. I like filling sketchbooks. That's one of my favorite things, just like making a mess of it and filling a sketchbook.
That's
Um,
amazing. Tell me more about that.
yeah, I, like I said, I draw through my lectures, so I tend to have a lot of sketches, and they usually never go anywhere. I really like, you can't see it, but there's a tower here of markers that I tend to block in with. I don't tend to do anything too detailed with the markers in the traditional mediums. It tends to be more loose and uh, blotchy, I guess, with the markers. I kind of use them a little bit more like watercolor, I think, in terms of it being more of an accent than like a refined thing. But digitally, I like to do more of the refined thing.
Hmm.
But traditionally for me, it's much more of a mess in a good way. Um, I like it being a mess. Uh, but yeah, I like to doodle a lot. It's pretty much always people. Not always. I've been trying to branch out and draw more things, but I struggle with animals. But yeah, I draw lots of like characters from shows, characters in my brain, just like, oh, I want to draw a girl with this haircut today, and that will be in there. Yeah,
Comes to you when it comes to you, is it like an itch that needs to be scratched that you just need
yeah,
out? Okay.
100%, yeah. Which I think is why that sketching stage comes really easy to me, and it's the fact that there's so much of that, and then um, a lot less of the fully finished stuff for me is because I spend so much time in that sketching stage. But yeah, I have an idea and I'm like, oh yes, this needs to happen.
I love that. And it's such a great, that's why you fill up so many sketchbooks. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
It also
I think so.
this strange idea we have in our heads sometimes as creators that something that is finished is one thing versus a sketch, which for me is like, what's wrong with a sketch being a sketch? Just being,
Yeah.
is that,
Yeah, it's, oof.
where does that come from? Do you think it's something that is placed in, like, is it through school or is it just through culture, or does it have something to do with how easy it is to share things online now and the perceptions that people might have of us?
Yeah, I think that that's something I'm massively working on, is trying to see the sketches as just as valuable to share with the world as the finished stuff.
Yeah.
Because it is just as finished. I'm still saying it, right? So it's like, oh, garbage truck making loud noises. Sorry.
Right here, so it's all, don't
You
worry.
can't even hear. Great. Okay. Yeah. So I think honestly, I feel like part of it comes from the fact that, like you mentioned, schooling. There's kind of a process of like, show me your sketches, and then show you my work in progress, and then show the finished thing.
Mm.
And with assignments, you're never really going to get the finished product is the sketch. But like when people are seeing your artwork, I mean, there's kind of a meme of it of like when artists see two, or when people on social media see two drawings, they don't think like, oh, one's better than the other. They're like, oh, two drawings.
Yeah.
So that's kind of something that we need to step back and remind ourselves that people are gonna. Now it's really loud. People are gonna enjoy what you put out if they enjoy what you put out, and whatever that is. It can be a sketch. It can be something that's fully colored with, paint and everything. But yeah, I think schooling is definitely part of it, and I think the social media culture is also part of it. Of like when you see artists who are popular, a lot of their stuff is like, quite like just obviously, I mean, it's popular for a reason. It looks great. But that sort of comes across as like, okay, that's the bar. When in reality, it's like it shouldn't be. What you want to put out into your little, like I've seen the analogy of your social media being your house. What you want to decorate your house with is your choice. So yeah.
I also, as an appreciator, I love seeing process, and I love knowing that process can be perfect just as its own one beautiful,
Exactly.
potentially imperfectly perfect thing, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Same here.
yeah, because it's not just about all those shiny. I think
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
begin to not distrust. That's the wrong word. But when I see these, finished, complete, perfect, everything
Yes.
as it should be things, it feels so curated to me that it begins to lose a sense of life.
I
And
know what you mean.
yeah, so
I know what you mean. Yeah, you kind of do need to like get a bit of a peek behind the curtains. Otherwise, you think it's so easy to do.
yeah,
That's why I really like artists who do share their work in progresses, because you think, okay, like it's not that like you think that the work isn't valuable, because it is, but it's just a show of like, the fact that I'm struggling with this isn't just on me. It's a hard thing to do. And it, particularly drawing digitally, there is a learning curve. And I think people see those finished works and think, oh, wow, that'd be so easy. But in reality, it takes a while. Like a lot of my stuff is like 10 hours to complete, like the fully, finished, or whatever you want to call it, stuff that goes on Instagram. And it's like, you don't see it. You just see the thing. But it is so important to think of like, there is a lot of phases before that thing goes out.
oh, and,
Yeah,
and it's the acknowledgement of the human behind the process as well, regardless
absolutely.
of the tools you're using to create it.
Hmm.
And that maybe that's
Yeah.
a personal thing, but I always appreciate that acknowledgement, even if it's today's a crap day, folks. Here's a stick figure.
Yeah, absolutely. I do that too, and I think it's good, because it's sort of for not necessarily younger artists, but also newer artists will be able to see that, like, yeah, you're not 100% every day, because that's just not attainable and not realistic. You're not going to be able to have days where you're pumping out masterpieces just willy-nilly.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen to anybody. But I think we kind of get into this perspective of like, oh, everything is this and everything needs to be this quality. all the time. It's like, no,
No.
it doesn't.
And I think this is a conversation we often end up having with different, like artists of all kinds, is also that aspect of that also sells this idea of you have to be one thing and one thing alone. And,
Yeah.
that you find your brand and that's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, no, that's not what being an artist is about.
No.
Learning and discovering and making mistakes.
Yes, exactly.
And changing things up when you need to.
100%.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I love I guess this is a very long-winded way of keep on showing me the sketches, please, if you
Keep doing it.
want.
Yeah. Keep on doing it. Absolutely. I'm trying to remind myself that everything is worth putting out into the world, because if you like it and it makes you happy, then if you want to post it, post it.
If you want to post it, because
yes, exactly.
Just revisiting that note you had about the pressure that's right now to post every day, all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That constant availability isn't necessarily healthy either.
Yeah, no.
And not
absolutely
realistic. If we're living our lives and we're filling ourselves and refueling, and that doesn't always come from output, constant output, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We were actually talking about in class the other day of like different forms of inspiration as well, and that sort of thing is important to take time for too, because just looking at one type of inspiration is great, but then as soon as you get sort of a wide field of like different forms of inspiration, that's when you're able to make stuff and have it feel a little less like we were talking about earlier, like just seeing all of the finished digital pieces. I think that you might get into a like, okay, well, this is what it needs to be, but when it's obviously not true. And like the other thing about it too is that like I think like you mentioned art style, I think it's really unapproachable for artists who are like, oh, I want to share my work, but it all has to look the same. It all has to be the same style. And I already have to know how to do it and got it every time. And it's like, explore it, let it grow on its own, and let it be what it is at the time. Yeah.
That's like a lovely way to live life as well. I think a lovely way to human.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the goal, I think, for sure. It's just let it be what it is in the present. And if you want it to be something else, you can work on it.
Yeah. There's a lot of love coming in for you in the comments. Just people who love your work and think you're.
Thank you.
How does it feel when people say that, when people compliment you?
It's a kind of bewildering because I've never been great at accepting compliments. I know a lot of people say that. I'm working at it actively to be like, instead of just saying like, no, whatever, or actively being like, yes, thank you. But it is also very flustering because, I mean, particularly coming from like being a really shy kid, and now suddenly like people can see my art if they want to, which is cool. But it is so nice, and it's really like something you have to like click back into sometimes. Like I go back and look at other comments of like, oh yeah, people did like this, or when I would post a sketch or something.
Yeah.
Sorry, hiccups. That was like in my brain considered unfinished, and then seeing all the nice comments below it, like sometimes you have to go back to that and like reconnect with like, okay, like here's the reality, people like it. And I mean, obviously you shouldn't just make art just because people will like it, you should make it because you like it. But of course the encouragement helps. So that's definitely part of it too.
And there's a beautiful thing that happens just with that chemistry of the people. We create things for ourselves, I think.
Yes.
But that sharing piece, that storytelling piece, right?
Yeah.
We can tell stories to ourselves for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at a certain point, we need to, that we can share them. There's permission to share. And Love a Slug too saying, testament to your talent that you have a bit of imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah. Definitely got a bit of that going on. For sure. I think it's very, very relatable, particularly right now because we get on social media when we're so young, and particularly my generation, there's a lot of like, we're doing, like you said, what we were already doing before, but now we're sharing it. So there does become that element of imposter syndrome, because it's like, oh man, like you think I'm really good, but really though, like it's interesting, and it's something I've been sort of toying around with my brain as well, of sort of like understanding that like I wouldn't have gotten this far if there wasn't any substance there. like
Mm.
to what I'm making. If people like, if there wasn't a connection between what I like to make and what other people like to see, um, I don't know if it make any sense. I don't know.
You are to me. Folks, let me know out there if you have any questions. Feel free to send them along. But when I hear you say that, there's something about, there's the visual aspect, obviously, of I love
Mm-hmm.
the style, those colors, that movement, how, all of those pieces that come together aesthetically. But then there's a storytelling piece. And this
Mm-hmm.
could be through, I know this world, I love these characters, but it also
Yeah.
comes from the place of that experience I can relate to. And that experience
Yeah.
that you found a way to encapsulate somehow. Now I know I'm not alone, or now I know
Yeah.
there's community out there for me. There are so many things that it does. I mean, it still doesn't help. I think
Yeah.
that imposter syndrome, it's still hard for a lot of us to just say
Yeah.
you. And because I think there's a fear that if we allow that, well, maybe, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Is
Yeah. Yeah.
when I think about that for myself, sometimes there's this fear of,
Yeah.
if I get too comfortable with that feeling, maybe I'll stop growing, or maybe I won't
Yeah.
when I suck, or maybe
Yeah.
I'll become that thing that I don't want to become, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And everything that comes along with that, right? Like I'll lose everything, or,
Mm-hmm.
who knows, right? Um, it's an interesting thing of finding, as you mentioned in the beginning, this sense of balance between
Yeah.
appreciate, receive, store away, stash it away, or just let it go so you can move
Mm-hmm.
peace and do what you need to do. I don't know. What?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that it's interesting because I think that like we see social media more of as a job than we used to.
Yeah.
So like one of the things in that similar vein that I've struggled with is if I start to see this as a job, will I still like it?
Ah,
Um,
interesting.
and that's a thing for me is like I've been concerned of if I become one of those social media people, will I stop enjoying it? But I think I've been able to maintain I'm going to post what I love and that's going to be that. And if you like it as well, you can stay. And if not, no harm done. You can head out. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I think that that's part of the imposter syndrome for me is this feeling of like, oh, but what if I'm, this, I don't know, I guess the word might be corporate, of like too corporate or something at some point. But at the same time,
Mm.
like, you should promote yourself and you should like, you know, the sort of idea of like a starving artist or whatever, like it's, um, you can still promote yourself and not be the like, overconfidence that you might fear.
I think, yeah, there's a really wonderful place to be in. And I love this. If you love it too, that's great. And that can be work. Why not?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
enough.
100%. Yeah.
And I think if we can stay in that place, then that's really, really healthy versus
Yeah.
must do this or for this person, or I have to get this out there because
Exactly.
it's about them or the others, less than
Hmm.
about you, then maybe again that balance
Yeah.
shift to an unhealthy place.
100%.
But that's
Yeah.
the interesting area that we could have a whole other conversation about.
Yes.
Note to self, future live stream,
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Yeah.
because I think what you're recognizing and what you're processing, there's so many other people out there that are having those conversations,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Of like, what kind of space do I want to curate?
Yeah.
And like, at what point do I take a step back and think like, okay, what am I making what I want to make, or am I making what I think would do well? And they can overlap completely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like Critical Role fan art tends to reach a lot of people, and that's always wonderful. But I also love making it still, so it's good to like do like check-ins of yourself of like, I like this, yeah, okay, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing is important.
So when it comes to your original work,
Yeah.
what kind of stories are you looking forward to telling once you're finished with school and you have time to just do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really love stories that I tend to gravitate towards stuff that's, I know found family is a trope that actually tends to come up a lot in D&D as well, ironically, because it's sort of this matter of like a bunch of people that might feel like outcasts or might feel like they don't fit on their own, but they fit in with each other in a way where it's like, you don't need to change. We like you anyway. I really love that kind of thing. And I am a sucker for a happy ending. So I like things to be like, there's got to be a bit of a, roller coaster to get there. But I definitely lean towards stories that do have a resolution. And I also really like thinking about character arc as well. That's one of my other favorite things to think about is like, what would be the thing that this character fears? How do they deal with it? And how do they get out of it? Um, that's one of my favorite things to think about as well. So I think that, yeah, I always love like friendship stuff too. I always like working on it. Like the same with the found family sort of trope of like um, two people making each other better by boosting each other up. That sort of thing is what I tend to gravitate towards.
Love that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having stories that resolve. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
And hearing you talk about how you enjoy taking people through the journey as well,
yeah, hmm
that makes me
yeah.
excited to see more of your work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I think sometimes like writing in particular is really intimidating because you think like this character has to be flawless, but in reality they should be full of flaws. They should be just a Swiss cheese of flaws.
Oh gosh, yes, that's interesting.
Yeah,
And
because then you have somewhere to work. You have somewhere to go.
that's it. That's the flaw,
Yeah.
the desire to move forward and figure things out and become,
hmm
well, there's that choice.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, that's a whole other thing. Do I choice to move forward to become better, to change, to become everything you want to be, or to just let yourself slide?
Yes, exactly, right?
Thing that role play games like D&D let you explore.
It lets you explore, and I think it's nice too to play out both ideas that you want to get better at and as well things that you already have. So like you can pull on personal experience of like this is something that I went through and this is something that I came out of better. And also you can look forward to the future of like this is something that I would hope to get better at and get better with, like confidence. I have a tendency to portray extroverted characters when I'm a massive introvert.
Hmm.
But it's like with that medium of storytelling, you can slowly start weaning yourself towards somewhere that you might want to be. Not specifically in that example, but just in any instance.
Kind of that the creative practice,
Yeah,
active experiences through the art we make or the stories we tell, exploring, practicing, trying things out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great.
I love it. Okay.
Um,
Oh, we are coming near the end. So there's a few
yeah,
folks. One is looking back at where you've come from or imagining people that might be in a place that you've been where you needed to hear something, not necessarily advice, but is there anything that you have learned or discovered along the way that you feel might be good for other folks, other creators,
yeah.
members to hear? What would you say?
Um, I would say honestly, just keep going because there's no rush.
Hmm.
I think that one of the biggest things for me was this sort of paralysis of um, I need to get better now. But that's super not true, and it will come naturally. Um, you don't have to force anything. It's just if you do the thing enough, you'll get there. You don't have to worry about like even necessarily like managing like even a timeline of growth. You'll just get there eventually and just let it be what it is. Um, because I think that we're all, I mean, obviously challenging yourself to grow is always fantastic, but there's no rush, I guess is the biggest part of that.
I like that. And what finding the thing? How do you find the thing that you want to do?
Um, I think that it's sort of a balance of like, what's the thing that you like to do, and also what's the thing that you like to do that you know there is uh, room to always keep uh, coming up with new stuff for.
Ooh.
As long as you're able to not box yourself in, because hiccups are back. As long as you're able to, like for me, illustration is perfect because it's this great spot where I feel comfy, like I mentioned before, but also that there's always new stuff to learn. So when it comes to something I want to do for my career, I want to make sure that it's like uh, both something I have a lot of passion in, because that's obviously really important, but also something that I'm not taking like a tiny part. I really like to do a little bit of everything. But yeah, think that that's probably the most direction I've had is like what do I love, and also what do I love in which I can always be getting better at, because there's no set determined finish.
And the no need to rush on top of that, which is a beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, now the last question I have for you today is if
Yeah,
people want to learn more about you or follow you or support you as an artist or keep an eye out for that comic that will be coming,
yeah, yeah.
where can we find you?
So creative_KP is my Instagram. Um, that's pretty much my main, like that's where I post art most frequently. That's where the most of it is. I do also occasionally post on Tumblr, which is creative_KP with no underscore. And my Twitter is honestly just nonsense.
Both
But
Twitter are absolute.
yeah, I it's just goofs. But I also do have a website on my in my link on my in my bio on my Instagram that has in a lot of ways like just a better way of scrolling through my art. So if you're like, hey, I want to see some of your stuff, that's the best way to see it. So you can actually like zoom in where Instagram doesn't really let you do that a whole bunch. But I do have a compile of some of my artwork. It's not constantly updating, but I try my best. Yeah.
So thank you. So
So
we
yeah,
creative_KP, or if we Google creative KP, we can see where else it takes us to find
yeah.
your Tumblrs and things like that and your website.
Yeah, it's creative_KP and then creative KP with no underscore. And then I believe Twitter is Rose_creative KP because the name was taken. But either way, I have a link. I have a link tree. Instagram's the best way though.
Yeah.
You can always DM to say hi.
That's great. So folks, reach out, say hi. Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
No, no worries. Is there anything else you want to just like any last minute shout outs for the community?
No, not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay.
I think I'm good. Thank you though.
Thank you. And you know what? Who knows? As with everyone I talk to, I always find that 100 other conversations spark up in the 1 hour we spend together. So
yes, absolutely.
maybe there'll be some opportunities in the future for some more collaborations. Oh, and a shout.
Yeah, I got that.
Always, of course, shout outs to the moms everywhere. Thank you. Moms and teachers alike.
The biggest shout out. Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Okay.
And we'll see you again.
Thank you so much.
In the meantime, good luck and with all things school and graphic design.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Oh, wow. Another fantastic live stream chat with Kayla of creative_KP on Instagram. If you haven't already followed them, check out their page and look up their link tree and see everything else out there. I learn about how you can support all the artists in your life, of course. That's always a good thing. But today, I really enjoy leaving with that one thought, that idea of not necessarily slowing down, but reminding ourselves that there's no rush. There's no rush. There's so much out there, and as long as we're doing the thing that we want and love to do, trusting in that process will get us where we want to be. So it gives us an opportunity, to just enjoy the moment a little bit more, enjoy what we're doing, and trust that other people will enjoy it too when we find that courage to let it out, to share it, to tell our stories with the folks who are around us. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us here on Instagram. I look forward to connecting with you again tomorrow, Wednesday. As always, we have our live streams on Facebook from 2 p.m. till 3:30, except for tomorrow. We'll be doing it at a different time. We'll be doing it at 3:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. just for funsies, shaking things up. But yeah, thanks for being here. And until we can connect and create with one another again in person, I look forward to connecting and creating with you right here online. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and keep creating. Bye.